please welcome our first Love in Action speaker, Pastor Michael Cobb.
The only thing better than having a chance to say stuff that's really on your heart out loud and in public is to do so with friends. I'm so glad to be here among you today. I think I'm here because I said something as part of a benediction a couple of weeks ago that a couple of people thought might fit in well with a conversation about love in action. And it's that when you think of love in action, you, like me, probably think of Popeye. Of course. Now, you may not know it, but back in the 20s and 30s, the Popeye cartoons were fantastic. If you see them, they're in black and white, so they don't get shown as much, but they're really, really great. And when you watch them, they all have the same basic rhythm, which is that things start off good. They start off fine, they start off slow, and then something happens. Maybe Bluto shows up. Something happens. And then as things go, tension builds, and things are not okay, and it builds, and it builds, and it builds, and it always gets to a point about 2/3 of the way through where Popeye almost does an aside to the camera, and he says, "That's all I can stands. I can't stands no more." And that was awesome, because that's when you know the can of spinach is coming out and you know something good's going to happen. I heard that referred to by someone as a Popeye moment, talking about how you may reach a point where, to you, you've had all you can stands, you can't stands no more either. It's a Popeye moment. It's something that seems to come up again and again and again. I've been interested in politics my whole life. I've voted since I was 18. For the longest time, I didn't affiliate with a party because, you know, they're all the same, right? They're all terrible. And in my life, I started to, I moved around a little bit, and when I moved to Connecticut, I had some friends in Connecticut, and at one point they said, well, with things that are happening that you don't like, are you just going to grit your teeth, or are you going to actually maybe do something productive about this? Two things were happening at the same time. One of them was that after years away from a church, I discovered a church that pretty much started me on a path to where I am today, although I didn't know it at the time. The other thing was that the revelations were getting fast and furious about our country torturing people in Abu Ghraib. I think torturing people may have been my Popeye moment, where I said, if I do nothing, it's going to hurt me more to just shut up and play nice than it's going to be what I risk saying something, doing something. So I had to do something. That moving me towards the church told me eventually what I needed to do. I didn't know it at the time. I'm guessing that the reason you're all out here when it's 95 degrees in the sun is because at some point you've all had a Popeye moment. And I'm grateful that you responded to it, because if you want to know what love in action looks like, it's responding rather than gritting your teeth, even if it means stepping outside of your comfort zone, even if it means people may not think well of you because you're stirring stuff up. But you know this is something you have to do for the sake of other people, not just you. It's a Popeye moment. What I did was in the church. What Richardson's did resulted in this. What you do, I don't know, because we all have different abilities. There's different things that were our moment. So we're all responding to different things. Today, I'm thrilled that we're responding together because we need mutual support. But what we do is going to be a little bit different for each one of us. I'm not sure that that matters. I think what does matter is that you do something. That matters a lot. That's one of 3 points that I wanted to make today. was find your moment and take action. The second one, I was trying to think of a good illustration, and I've reached a point in my life where I do some of my illustrations and no one knows what I'm talking about. One of my first churches, I was preaching on Super Bowl Sunday, and people asked who I was rooting for, and I don't really care about sports, so I said I'm rooting for Katy Perry because she was doing a halftime show, and I looked out at the people who had no idea who this was, and it was the wrong message for the moment. I'm hoping I do better today if I bring up Back to the Future. A little bit better? A little bit better, all right. Early on, they're outside of the Twin Pines Mall, and they back into a tree, and they time travel, and when they come back, the sign says Lone Pine Mall, to point out that the things that they did had ramifications, even if they didn't know it at the time. The second point I want to make has to do with having ramifications of what you don't know. It has to do with the way you live your life. I hope I do my parents proud by what I do. From time to time in my life, I have wanted to live a life that would make my parents proud of me. I'm guessing that at least some of you, at least some of the time, have wanted that too, to do your family proud. I think you need to flip the script on that. Instead of being concerned about that, I am now more concerned about making my great-great-great-great-grandchildren proud. I think that one of the best things that we can do is dedicate ourselves to doing things now that will have ramifications in the future that will make them look at what we did and say, I'm so glad they did that because that changed the world that I live in. This was something that I preached about this morning. There's a piece of scripture in the New Testament talking about the great faith of the people in the Old Testament and how that should inspire us. If you know the stories that were being referred to, those people were terrible. They were faithless. They did the wrong thing again and again and again. But eventually they did the right thing, and that's what's being written about years later, not all the bad stuff. The fact that they had faith is what persisted. That gives me great hope, because it means that if you take the right action, your shortcomings will fade over time. Specifically, I'm thinking that I started doing activist type work probably in my early 20s. So I've been doing this a long time. And if you knew me then, you would say, that guy's doing some good. And in hindsight, I look and I think, there is so much I had no idea about. It was decades before I heard the term cisgender. It was decades before I had friends in some of these groups that I'd hoped to advocate for. It was years before I got to where I am now, and I think I'm doing a pretty good job now. I kind of hope that in 20 or 10 or 5 years I can look back and say, well, gee, I know things now that I didn't know then, because if we ever get to a point where we think we've got it all down, I think that's where we start to go wrong. I think that's the root of privilege, thinking that we understand everything there is to understand and not recognizing that sometimes there are universes out there that we don't even know we exist well enough to know how much we don't understand them. How are you able to live differently right now so that your great-great-great-grandchildren are proud of you? If that's what you're going to try to do, it may not always look like you're making progress. If we are going to prevent the total collapse of our climate, it will take a lot of work and sacrifice on our part, and we might not see where that ends, but that's okay. Because if we don't do it, that 5 generations from now, a group of people may not even exist. So that's the second thing. The second thing is live in a way that will make your great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren proud of something that you did now, and know that even if you're not doing great, you can do this. You're not dead yet. There's still more you can do. That's my second point. My third point. This is a little bit more of a churchy point. It has to do with prayer. It also has to do with good news. And this is my point. If there's going to be answered prayer, if there's going to be good news, some of that comes through us. Here's what I mean. It's gotten to a point where some of us laugh when we hear something answered with the term thoughts and prayers, because it is so empty. There's very little that you can say to offend me. Performative empathy offends me deeply. Taking language of religion and of faith and using that to dodge responsibility for taking any action at all offends me deeply. The job is not to delegate action to other people. The job is for one's thoughts and prayers to be the starting point, and then from there you have to go and do something, because I think that's how prayers sometimes get answered. And if you do nothing, nothing happens. Again, this is not to tell you what to do, because we have different gifts, different beliefs, different places in our lives, different levels of comfort stepping out and doing something. So I can't tell you what to do. I'm pretty sure we've got to do something if we want anything to change, if we want anything to be better, if we don't want to have to put up with people offering performative, empty empathy for the rest of our lives anytime something happens that didn't have to happen if just a couple of people would have said, it's up to me to do something to stop this. So that's my third point. And I can't tell you what to do there, but what I can do is offer some suggestions. And if any of these resonate, maybe that's a starting point. In a world where others are bringing lies, bring truth. When others bring violence, bring peace. When people are so overwhelmed with cynicism that they are paralyzed, bring hope. When others say, don't even bother doing anything because it won't matter anyway, make an effort. When all that you see is hatred, bring love. When all that you see is a microphone with an unending string of white men, step down, let someone else have a turn. Don't interject, don't correct, just be quiet. Listen. You will find that you will be a far better ally knowing things that you didn't even know you didn't know. When you don't see a path forward, consider that God may answer your prayers with someone else. When you need to take a rest, take a rest. Hydrate. And when you are ready, then you step up so someone else can take that rest. Life is done through the buddy system, right? And if you do it that way, you don't have to grit your teeth, because you will be the ones working for change. Your great-great-grandchildren will say, thank goodness they did that. And we'll get through this by supporting one another. Thank you.